Hello? Yes. Hello, everybody. Good morning. Good morning. So it's, of course, a pleasure to be here for the second time on stage, but this time I'm particularly keen on this. I mean, not that, the other day I wasn't, but I'm especially happy to speak today with my colleagues here from organizations whose missions speak directly to what reliable translation makes possible. It's a topic that it's particularly close to my heart, as many of you know, of course. And we often think that, of translation as a service or as a step in a workflow, but in reality, it's something much deeper. The infrastructure, I would say, that quietly sustains advocacy, human rights, and humanitarian response. It protects against risk, yes, but more importantly, it enables accessibility and impact. So when used wisely, I'm sure you will agree with me, technology can amplify this function, but only when it's anchored in strategy, quality, and purpose. So in the work of Oxfam, Save the Children, and Tearfund, professional translation underpins missions that share a common thread, protecting rights, fighting inequalities in all its forms, protecting dignity, and ensuring that the communities they work with access to the information, resources, and support they need not only to survive, but to thrive in all areas of life. So I'm delighted to introduce my fellow colleagues and panelists here today, each of whom brings a unique perspective, I would say, from their organization. So Adriana INCHAUSTI, translations manager at Oxfam Intermon, where her team manages around 1 million words per year, mainly across Arabic, English, Spanish and French, as well as other official languages in Spain, in collaboration with Oxfam Great Britain, which handles a similar volume. And Laura de Oliveira, translations lead at Save the Children International, where between 2024 and 2025, they managed basically over 2 million words for more than 40 teams across the movement, primarily in Arabic, English, French, Latin American, Spanish, plus additional languages such as Ukrainian and Turkish. And last but not least, Kaline de Oliveira Fernandes, translations technical coordinators at Tearfund, where since the pandemic, they have translated about 1 million words per year, supporting 6 core languages, Arabic, English, French, Portuguese, Spanish, and Kiswahili, as well as other, including Nepali, Kinyarwanda, Burmese, Lao, and Thai. Lots of fun. So it's really wonderful to have you here today. But before we go into the questions, I'd like to launch a poll for you to, engage with. So the question is pretty simple. In humanitarian and human rights work, what do you see as the greatest risk if translation is not reliable? Misinformation or harmful decision, exclusion of certain languages or communities, lack of clarity, accessibility or trust, reinforcing unequal power dynamics, all of the above. Surprise. So yeah, there are still some of you voting. I mean, of course, we will unpack on this during our talk, so I won't give you an answer. So let's now then, 6%, anyway, all of the above is the most voted, but misinformation or harmful decisions is pretty high up as well. So now I turn to you. Let's start with something more concrete. In your work, can you recall a moment when translation quality, however you define it, directly influenced the outcome of a campaign, a response, or an advocacy effort? Or, for example, a moment when you caught a near miss, something that could have gone very wrong, but as a human expert, you helped prevent it.
Hello? Yeah. First of all, thank you very much for having us here. So in my case, I'm going to actually borrow an example from another translation team in the Confederation, not that in my team haven't had near misses and so on, but in this case, it's related to what is now the flagship report of Oxfam, the one that it publishes ahead of the World Economic Forum in Davos annually, related on inequality issues. And this happened on the very first edition of that report, a very important campaign, that luckily, this was a mistranslation that luckily was spotted before the report was launched, but unfortunately, when the report had been already printed. So Oxfam had to recall the report and delay the launch of it when, at moments where timing is everything. And for organizations where funds, especially unrestricted funds, have to be spent very efficiently, the economic impact of this was important, of course, but luckily, the reputational damage and credibility damage that it could have had luckily was averted. It was very important. So, you have to be very vigilant on this kind of issue. So, yeah, very specific example.
Thank you, Adriana. Who would like to go next?
Hi, it's great to be here. For me, collaboration is key when we're translating humanitarian content. And a particular example comes to mind when I think about how collaboration really helped us deliver on the intent and the purpose of a document. And it was our child-centered anticipatory action guide. The guide was, developed to equip our colleagues with practical guidance to deliver anticipatory action activities, anticipatory action being initiatives and activities that can prevent or mitigate the impacts of forecasted hazards. And so it's a really critical area for teams to be working in. And so the report was also designed to support local leaders to deliver the programs and to support children as well for their rights to be respected in terms of the impact that hazardous events have on them as well. So a really key document for us to be working on. And so the collaboration was crucial. We translated the report with professional linguists that have worked with us for many years, deeply specialized linguists. But we also made sure to collaborate very closely with our internal colleagues, our subject matter experts, and we had a rigorous process. We had a translation, proofreading, post-review, and then a review with our internal colleagues. And it was really interesting because when the internal colleagues received the translations, they were very happy with it. We had a very robust translation process, but even then there was disagreements with terminology and how certain terms were correct, in dictionaries it was correct, but our internal colleagues, they knew that some terms weren't going to engage as they should, even if they were, the translators did a great job, but in the context of our organisation, the terms really needed to be very, very specific for our colleagues to be able to just pick up and run with them. And so it was fascinating to really understand that the pushback as well from colleagues and the linguists, when they went to review the internally reviewed document, they said, well, this term's in the dictionary, are they sure? And so we had a really interesting conversation, and ultimately it goes back to the purpose, the intent, the audience, and so this collaboration between linguists, the internal colleagues, the subject matter experts, and also ourselves as project managers and experts in those workflows was really crucial to understand when we needed to push back against the linguists, when we needed to really get a bit more information from our internal colleagues, who obviously aren't linguists. So we had this three-way collaboration that enabled us essentially to create a document that was really well received by all of the colleagues across all of the regions that were required to implement, design, plan, anticipatory action activities. And it is one of the top 10 most read documents in 2024 on our resource centre. And so, yeah, the quality there was a collaborative effort, rooted in terminology for the intended audience. And yeah, it was a really interesting experience to work on that document.
It's just before Kaline, it's interesting when you say it was fascinating collaboration, because I can picture the back and forth. So, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. It's an honor to be here. And the example that come to mind in my work is actually an example of collaboration. So at Tearfund, when we translate, we're really conscious about the tone of the translation. So we always try to use a language that fosters ownership of a project or idea by the people. And for context, one of our corporate priorities is called Church and Community Transformation, CCT, because we believe that the churches can play a pivotal role in being centers of transformation in their communities, but that's not necessarily how they see themselves. So the first process in the CCT is called envisioning, as in sharing this vision so that the church can take on this role. But it is a problematic term for translation because it can sound top-down. So you don't have a vision, and I have come to give it to you. So we were aware of this translation, of this danger. So we took a collaborative approach, and we consulted with the team in Latin America, who would actually be using the resource. And this enabled us to come up with a phrase instead of one word. And this phrase can be tweaked according to the meaning in the English. So we say abrazar la visión, so embrace the vision, or compartir la visión, sharing the vision, depending on what the English wants to say. So that has enabled us not only to give the concept more depth in Spanish, but also the audiences don't feel like they don't have the ability to have a vision. And so this has played a pivotal role in the engagement with the resources and, in effect, bringing about the change that we want to see. Thank you.
Thank you. So each one of you operates in environments where, time, pressure, stakes are pretty high. And so do you work with a given, or defined quality framework or approach? And if so, what are the factors that carry most of the weight? So I don't know, speed or audience. What are the key factors in this framework?
So in our case, well, it really depends of the type of document, the context, the use is going to of it. But in general, what we use is a very knowledge management based approach to quality, meaning terminology, translation memories, and so on. But actually, I was thinking that collaboration my colleagues were mentioning is actually very important when, addressing or ensuring quality. Because raising awareness about among our colleagues about the translation process can help a lot in avoiding issues, working, it goes from, if they factor in translation right from the start of their projects, it helps with planning, it helps with choosing the right terminology. Even, if they do that, they get included in proposals to donors, so they have dedicated funds for when the time comes. And so, you can control, avoid uncertainties. And that certainly, it's key on ensuring quality in our case. So it's not a formal framework, but it's a really important thing. Yeah.
Thank you. Laura?
Yeah, I would also add, noting on the formality, and I think I joined Save the Children International in 2023, just before the perfect storm rolled in of AI and budget cuts. And we were at that point working in I don't want to say comfortable because it's never comfortable in humanitarian organisations, but we had we had more budget than we had now, and that enabled us to kind of push a more professional workflow for more content. So we would have, we have a really great team of core freelance linguists, and they would be our go-to, and we had lots of work. The project management was our main remit, and we had a really robust translation process. Our freelance linguists were keepers of terminology and the knowledge, and they had a expertise in our organisation. After, we've had some really sweeping cuts over the last 2 years. We've had back-to-back restructures, and now we have AI, which is freely accessible to our colleagues. It's meant that we've had to very quickly pivot. We've had to redefine quality. We've had to kind of take a much more strategic approach and actually root our teams within our organisation's priorities. We are, when we look at AI in particular, safeguarding quality is our expertise. Like, we, as linguists, we know where we can push, like where the boundaries are within what we have available as resources. And so it's important for us within our quality frameworks that we now know we need to make more formal, because we have colleagues right across the organisation able to request translations simply by one prompt. And so we need to really move into a more strategic, formal quality framework. And one of the ways that we want to do that is by putting at the core a really comprehensive mapping system for content. So, and like we've seen in previous talks over the last 3 days, that the intent, what's the intent of content, what's the purpose, and how do we convey that to colleagues? So how do we ensure that colleagues understand when we really have to push for budget, and when we can look to potentially use more internal resources or less robust external resources? And so I think that's the key to quality in this, in this new kind of AI-centric era, is being very, very clear on what you want your content to do, and making that very clear to colleagues. We need to be able to communicate that very easily, and that's how, with a content mapping framework is key to that. So yeah, I think really formalizing our quality processes and looking at really including AI, putting AI within our policy procedures is important. So we acknowledge that we are the experts in translation and AI in that space.
Yeah, for myself, we have come up with what we call a translation decision matrix. So we consider the resource the impact level and the resource availability. So let's say it's a high impact level and high resource availability, like a publication. So for that, we will have our highest quality approach, which is external translator, external proofreader, and an internal editor's check. If it's, for instance, medium impact but low availability, for instance, an internal email or an intranet post, then it's the freelancer translator and the external translator, and internal editor's check, and so on. So we make our decisions based on that framework that we have established.
It's interesting because what I miss in there is risk in that matrix. Do you have risk?
Well, it isn't the impact level, no?
Is it impact?
The impact,
you consider
yes,
that as risk? Okay.
Yeah.
So let's move on to technology then. Big topic. So in your context, has technology helped expand access to information or reach audiences you couldn't reach before?
Yes, so I think we are all in a very similar situation, and we are learning to navigate this new reality because, us as language experts, we've been working with machine translation for quite a while, but I would say that in the last couple of years, since especially ChatGPT appeared, everybody starts, using machine translation, our colleagues. So we have to deal with those two aspects. There is more and more pressure to use these technologies because obviously we work for organizations with limited funding. We are in a very pressure financial sector, so to say. But we also have to help our colleagues to use it wisely because, they are obviously going to use it. And so you wouldn't think that this technology that would enable having much more content translated, being language such a strategic asset in, driving inclusivity and decolonization, etc. It would be great, but it has to be used properly, the quality we've been talking about. So, otherwise it can be actually very detrimental to your purpose. So we are learning on how to work in this framework because we want to be language champions, right? And, make quality the most important thing. But sometimes we can be seen as blockers, like not wanting to adopt it. So we really have to balance our role there because we don't want to be seen as blockers, but we don't want to be blockers because we understand its potential. So we are, I think, especially, in my case, I can say I'm rethinking a bit of my role in terms of I want to be the language expert, but I want to become like an advisor to help people use this technology. But, the pressure sometimes is really, really big.
Yeah, I think it's clear that language technology enables us to create more translation and we can create translation faster in multiple languages. So that's a given. What is very clear, I think, in our work is that it is not a solution for inclusivity because machine translation and the output from LLMs is, as we've seen, can be extremely biased, and we can really cause harm. Especially as a humanitarian organisation, we have a commitment and we have a responsibility in the content that we put out to make sure that it is inclusive, that it's not going to cause harm, especially in a child rights organisation. We have to take those commitments extremely seriously, and I don't think we can look to technology to solve those problems for us. I think that lies within our human expertise and the values that we embody in our organisation. That's the collaborative effort to work out how we really drive multilingual content that is that represents the people that we serve and our colleagues. But it is really crucial for us to adapt and to embrace technology because someone else will do it if we don't do it. And we also have the expertise. In humanitarian organisations, we're extremely resourceful. We have to be because we have no staff. We have to wear so many hats, and especially in the translation sector, we have so many diverse content types. We can never sit on our laurels and just kind of let things happen. We're always actively finding solutions. And so when we are discussing these technical, the possibilities, we need to be in that space. And the whole thing of being a blocker is such a common conception within, when we talk to colleagues, I think they're almost like braced for impact. It's like, we're on your side, we're all colleagues, and we want to achieve the same goals as you, and we have the same responsibilities as you, and we need to do it together. Balancing it's the internal compromise between quality, speed. When we have an emergency response, it needs to be quick. So colleagues, of course, don't want to wait, for multiple working days when they know that if they put it into an LLM, it'll be instant. But we need to just constantly remind them that it's a collaborative effort to make sure that the actual purpose and the intent is met in the target text as it is in the source text, and that there's the quick fix often doesn't apply in this in humanitarian organizations.
So when I think of technology, I have more practical examples. So for instance, Footsteps, which is our main publication. It used to be only a printed magazine. So now with technology, we have WhatsApp versions, we have podcasts. We also have an e-learning platform with a growing number of courses. So in this sense, this kind of technology has really helped us reach a target audience, a bigger audience. And also through plugins in websites, we have been able to translate big internal systems, so like our procurement system, our grant system, our HR system, they're all bilingual. And for this, we used a hybrid approach. So we used AI translation, we used a post editor, and always the final editor's check. So in this sense, it helped, but there's always this consideration of when it is suitable and when it isn't, and always the human input and the collaboration that we've been mentioning so profusely about. Yeah.
Yeah, and let's not forget that for low-resource languages, those translations are not as good as they could be for English, into English translation, for example. So that could cause harm. I would like to hear now from all of you a bit, looking a bit to the future. So if you had to distill one key lesson that you would like to share with the audience today and turn it into an action point for the audience, what that would be?
Well, I don't know about an action point. It's just maybe add to this reflection, everything that we've been discussing for the last couple of days and what we've been mentioning, that for us collaboration is so important. So, quality is very important, of course, but we have to always bear in mind that it might not mean the same thing to everybody. So remaining flexible and adaptable is also very important. So I have had, as you guys, so many discussions about, why use an English term when we have a perfect term in Spanish that, says exactly the same. But if my colleagues are not going to use it and it's actually going to maybe, make their work a bit harder, why should I insist on using that, for example, right? So we have to be flexible, adaptable, and think about what is the purpose of what we're doing, and that's help our organization deliver its mission. So yeah, no action point, sorry.
For me, I think the key to the way we safeguard quality is by positioning translation and more broadly language accessibility as a strategic priority in our organizations. And we do that, we're doing that by developing a policy and procedures that are really embedded in our organizational priorities, and ensuring that they reflect our commitment as an organization, ensuring that translation has a seat at the table. It isn't a demand-driven service anymore. It is infrastructure. Every single colleague in our organization at one point has had a translation need, I'm pretty sure. And so understanding that it's all linked, it's all interlinked, that again, this idea of intent and purpose, and if you put a certain amount of effort into your source content, then equity, for equity, you need to put the same effort into your translations, and that, it has to be rooted in our organizational priorities. That's the key. And leadership have to approve our policies and our procedures. It needs to be an organizational, really a focus.
Well, I actually feel really blessed at Tearfund because my manager and the manager prior to her, they had been really driving this conversation, and they started that before the hype with AI. So they've been having these talks across the organization about clear language, inclusive language. So we sort of have the organization more on board with us. So we've been advocating for translation being not only translation, but clear communication and inclusive being thought of the beginning of the project. So we've had instances where we've been consulted. So like when they're drafting the English, they come to us, look, we're thinking of using this term. Do you think it's going to go well in translation? And they've actually asked for our input. And I think this is the result of this collaboration, of this conversation. Like, we're on the same team. We want to achieve the same purpose. And I think that's really what the game changer in achieving quality.
Thank you. I'd like to add to that. I mean, for me, one of the main recommendation would also be, if you're in an organization that has organizational KPIs, make sure that multilingualism, be it translation, interpretation, or whatever form, is included in that KPI list, so that the impact of the work of the organization includes also the impact generated by multilingualism. That is something that we have, for example, done at Amnesty. So now let's move on to the audience and see what questions there are. So let's open the Q&A, both on on Slido and in the room. So, Chris Starpin, let's start. Do your outfits organize off-peak season events for your freelancers to encourage them to immerse themselves in your work and be genuine members of a virtual team, a priority in high-end specialized translation? Who would like to take it? I can answer as well if you want, Chris.
Well, I can sort of answer that. It's not like off-peak season events, but for instance, when we rolled out our translation management software, which is MemoQ, we provide sessions where the translators could attend for free, where we would teach them how to use the tool. And then, throughout the process, some of them has used other CAT tools, some of them had used none. So we provide them all the tools to be in this process with us.
Work with this. Okay, it's working. Thank you so much to the three of you. It was really lovely to be sitting here and listening to your perspectives and to your knowledge sharing. So thank you for that. At different points, you talked about directly or indirectly about the need for policy or guidelines, if I'm not mistaken, throughout all of your organizations, institutions. Could you tell us a little bit more how you integrate AI literacy or information to your colleagues in those policies and guidelines? Thank you.
I can take that. We've just recently published AI guidelines for the organisation, and we're working closely with that team to ensure that, for example, when any recommendation they make that includes translation includes us, and then we have a discussion on the best way forward. And we are also we're developing our policies at the moment, and AI literacy will be embedded within it. And so making sure that colleagues are equipped to get the best output they can, whether that might be developing prompt libraries, for example, where we really are kind of guiding the prompts needed to get the output for any given content, and we'll map that. The different document types will require different prompts, so there's that practical application as well. But it's an ongoing conversation, and I think we have to have it firmly on as a key priority, and to remain in that AI space with the teams that are looking at AI for the general organisation, keeping, firmly reminding them that this is a conversation that we need to constantly be involved in, so we can continue to input accordingly.
So let's take another question from Slido. In humanitarian organization like yours, I can feel from your discussion that work done with love is crucial and therefore human input is key. At the same time, budget is such a big problem. How do you find the balance to keep up optimal quality? Well, who would like to go?
Yeah. Actually, I really like that, work done with love. I think this is actually a very important aspect. I think we are very lucky that we get to work with providers that really want to contribute to the mission of the our humanitarian organizations, and that is really helpful sometimes, you know, when budget is limited, and they always are willing to go the extra mile. So related to the one of the other questions, I think, about, you know, I think it was about having events with providers, etc. One of the things we give a lot of importance to is maintaining and care for our relationships with providers, because that's, you know, when sometimes you don't have like the resources, the time, the fact that they are willing to go the extra mile is really important. But we also, in that, I also want to highlight that we are very aware that this is a very a sector with a lot of pressures, you know, from how do I put it? Translators are many times expected to work over the weekends for very really reduced fees. So we also make a big effort, you know, with our colleagues to, you know, if you want to like protect workers' rights, translators also have those rights, should have. So we work actively to highlight the value of that work. So it's not always, you know, yeah, the fact that they are willing to go the extra mile is great, but, you know, we have to make sure people understand the importance of what they deliver. Yeah. Sorry.
Nurturing the relationship, of course, is key. And I wanted to add to this question in particular, for example, in our case, we introduced a tiered system of production. So something, you know, what needs to have, you know, higher editorial or top editorial level of publication, what we call publication level, then something that goes only with, you know, in post-editing, something that is also only delivered as a raw output, always depending on the demand of the requester and on the use of the purpose of the output. So it's a bit of a hybrid approach between, you know, resources available and, of course, the purpose, the intent behind the output and the would-be impact. Any last question? Yes.
Thank you. I have a question, and also related to the other earlier question about the budget. I can imagine that in your activity you must be dealing with a lot of personal data and probably other sensitive data, because you are dealing with children or people who are in difficult situations. And I'm wondering what kind of strategy or policies or rules you have, especially when you use technology providers, because you mentioned that you worked with machine translation, but now there are a lot of people using possibly also publicly available tool, which obviously collect all the data. So I'm wondering if you have, probably you have, I'm curious to know more about it, and also to recommend the translation, because there it's totally confidential and private. And the question about the budget comes in because it's also free of charge, because it's a public service. Not so much for Oxfam at the moment after Brexit, but if they become associated with Digital Europe or other programs, probably again. Thank you.
Would like to go? Very, very quickly.
Very quickly, yeah. So in terms of data protection, we actually have a compulsory, mandatory learning that every member of staff has to take. So we are very aware of the importance of protecting that data. And and then also, in terms of, AI policy and everything, this is something that is embedded. So, for example, every digital tool that is adopted in the organization, it has to be approved by the systems team, IT team. So taking everything into account. Yeah.
So,
Time to answer.
no. Yeah, go very, very
I just wanted
quickly.
to say, and it's important, I think, that in terms of the signing work that Chris Durban has asked, that especially in the humanitarian organisations, that we do, we've been talking about this a lot, signing work is important, and labelling work and the transparency in that is a key point as well for humanitarian organisations. So yes, I just wanted to point that out.
So thank you very much to this brilliant panelist, and I just wanted to let you know that the result of the poll was all of the above, of course. Thank you very much to everybody.